exciting. I can't believe you're launching your own podcast. Sorry, you're going to edit this.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Heart2Heart Pod. I have a special guest today. Her name is Anita. Hi, Anita.
Hello. Hi.
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 Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm the first guest, right?
Yes, thank you for being my first guest, for being a part of this. I'm really excited to have you here.
Thank you for having me, Tina. I'm really excited and also really nervous, but I already told you that before we started recording.
It's so funny because I'm nervous too.
Yeah.
But I mean, we're just having a casual
really nervous.
Yes.
That's true. That's also true.
And I do want to introduce Anita to all of you because Anita is one of my bestest friends and she is super supportive of this podcast and everything that I do. So I had to have her as my first guest.
Oh, thank you, Tina. Oh my God, I'm really actually excited to be on this podcast because I feel like this is something that you would totally be right up your alley. You're going to be so good at this. Yeah, today we are talking about cultivating self-love.
Yes. I'm going to ask you, what does self-love mean to you and how do you practice it on a regular basis?
It's a good question. I feel like whenever I think about self-love, it's mainly taking care of myself personally. And that means like emotionally and physically, mentally, all of those things. So for me, it can be something just as simple as recognizing what my body needs or wants, and then just putting that into action. So for example, I'll give you an example. This last week, I felt like, I need to take a little bit better care of myself. So I made sure to work out a little bit more. I also made sure to eat a little bit better. I did chores around the house, mainly because I think if it's a cluttered house, it's a cluttered mind. So I usually kind of do a little bit of chores here and there. But sometimes it also means recognizing if I'm sad or if I'm upset. I like to watch a good or funny or lighthearted YouTube video or something on Netflix. Generally, it just means to me figuring out what I need, what my body needs, and then acting on it and setting aside the appropriate amount of time for it. What about you?
That's such a great answer. Wow. Well, I completely agree with everything you said. You gave such great examples. For myself, yes, self-love means taking care of myself and again, what you said, like mentally, emotionally, and physically. And it really means like it's like a daily practice and showing up for myself every day and setting better boundaries with myself and the people around me, as well as, being self-aware about how I'm feeling from moment to moment every day. And there's a lot of things I try to do to practice self-love. And one habit that I really want to address that's like super life-changing for me, and I always talk about it, is my gratitude journal. And basically, I actually started off with a gratitude jar. Like every night I write down 3 things that I'm grateful for that happened that day. Very specific things. So I could write something as simple as I ate lobster that day, or or something like, I hopped on a call with Anita and she said something really nice to me, or like something that made me happy, that kind of thing. And sometimes I might even write down something that didn't go well, but I would try to flip it to something positive. So like, for example, like a month ago, I made mushroom risotto and it turned out really bad. Like I was a disappointment, but I'm like, but then, I learned what went wrong and how I can make it better next time. So I would do that in a jar. I'll write it down in slips of paper, like colored paper, and throw it in a jar, and it'll be like really pretty and aesthetic. But then now I started to use a journal instead so that I can actually go back and read it. Like I start my morning by reading a previous entry, so then I can at least like start
so
off
nice.
with positive thought and start my day well. So that's one way that I would continue to cultivate self-love. It's something that I look forward to at the end of the day. Yes.
That's so nice. Can I ask you how you ended up getting into this practice? Like, what was the thing that inspired you to start, if you know, or was it something that you came up with in your mind? Because you've told me about this before as well.
Yeah.
And for me personally, I've tried doing that too, and it does really help. But I feel like you're very consistent with how often you do it, and it is a really good practice to remind yourself about like the little things. So I wanted to know what motivated you to start in the first place.
Yeah. So I actually got the idea of someone who did it, and then apparently I started from Elizabeth Gilbert, the author, and then it's actually called like the happiness jar, and then it started off as a jar. But then what got me started was before, when I told you how I worked like 2 years ago, I started a job that I didn't enjoy working in, and it was like taking over my life. I was really unhappy working at that place, and then I needed to do things that would make me happy, and also practice gratitude so that I would feel better at the end of the day. So then I started that practice, and I found that it was actually really helpful, even though like I would say like 80% of the stuff that I wrote was about work because like it was basically I was at work all the time, right? But then I would write down like, my coworkers, they made me laugh that day, that type of thing, and it was really fun to read back. I like to read it. Sometimes I read it like randomly again, or like maybe the end of the year type of thing. But before, because I did the jar, the slips of paper, I just threw them away. I didn't want to be a hoarder. But now I'm like, I want to have it in a journal. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then
that's so nice.
Yeah, because even I'm not like, I wasn't that consistent. Sometimes I miss a day or two, but I still remember it. So I might like write it the next day. But now, like, we're in a global pandemic, and I actually make time to do it every day because it's only like 1 or 2 minutes a day. Like I write down point form notes like really quickly, and sometimes I write like 10 things a day. Like
yeah, that's so nice. That's actually really good. The motivation there, where you realize that if something was making you unhappy, and so you actively decided to do something about it. It's really good that you're very consistent with it, because I think I just mentioned I tried.
Are you still continuing?
No, so I did it for a while, but I go through periods of like on and off where I'll do it, and I think the time that I actually picked it up for a decent chunk of time for a few months was maybe when I was going through schooling, and it was sometimes very difficult, not just in terms of when you are like doing schoolwork in general, or just personal life as well. I went through this funk. I think everybody goes through ups and downs. And I had a journal that actually said "be happy" on it. And I thought to myself, well, maybe this is the opportunity to actually write stuff down. And instead of writing just like a one-liner, I would write an entire paragraph. But I think that's what gave me this problem of inconsistency somewhat, because I think I should have shortened it, the way that you're doing it.
Like a journal entry, right? Yeah.
It was full-blown journal entry. But I did it for about a month or so, and it did help during that time, I will say. And I think when things kind of went back to kind of a normal level in terms of like my mood, then I kind of stopped, and I think that's kind of where I can improve if I ever want to do that again. That's a really good idea, keeping a journal, because I can imagine it must be so fun to look back on.
Yeah, I know some people like to do it on their phone, like there's apps for that, and you can even do it audio. If you're like, oh,
Oh, really?
write down. Because like, you can always just like record yourself.
That's actually pretty fun. I mean, I don't like listening to myself record it sometimes, but that takes out the laziness of having to physically write it down.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh, that's
so that's good to know. Like, yeah, you do a lot of things to take care of yourself. And so how are you taking care of yourself mentally, emotionally, and physically during the pandemic right now that we're all struggling?
That's a good question. I know the pandemic is just such a weird overarching thing that's going across the entire world. So I think it's so important to talk about self-care because everybody can benefit from it.
Yeah, it's just a good topic to start off with, I think, because this topic, again, is so relevant for everyone.
Yeah. Personally, I guess in terms of emotionally or mentally, one of the things that I really have enjoyed over the pandemic is doing more frequent video calls and phone calls with people. So yours and my group, one of our groups, we call us the UW support group or the UWSG. And prior to the pandemic, we would maybe meet twice a year, but we would still text and talk before then. During the pandemic, we started a ritual of once a week or once every few weeks, everybody comes in. It's kind of a drop-in session. We have a one-time every single week. And then just chatting with everybody, I feel like brought me super close. It gave me something to look forward to every week. So even if it was a really bad week, I'd say, oh, you know what? I get to go home today and I get to talk to some of my best friends and just see what they're talking about, kind of mess around, maybe play some games. It was great. So that's one of the things. Especially now, I think a lot of people are dealing with loneliness in general. I personally live alone, and I think other people that live alone, even if you don't live alone, it is harder to connect with people because there's not that, you can't see somebody physically in person as much anymore. So that has been one really, really good thing for my mental health and just emotionally being able to see people constantly. I also talk to my other groups of friends once every 2 weeks or once every month. And that really helps as well, just catching up and seeing what everybody else is up to. And physically, I've been trying to keep myself in a little bit better shape. So I work out maybe 4 to 5 times a week.
Wow.
And I discovered
Anita always motivates me to work out more.
Well, I don't know. I feel like I don't have the excuse, I guess, not to because generally, like I said, I live alone. And when I'm at home, I don't usually go outside because of the pandemic and everything, unless I need to get groceries. And so I feel like to spend my extra time, I need to do something else, like on my days off. So I spend a little bit of time every day. And I think a lot of people have heard of this YouTuber, but I started to discover workouts from Chloe Ting. And I think one of the people that first told me about it was you, Tina.
Oh, really? Yeah. And you did you did multiple challenges, didn't you?
I did a lot of her challenges. So I started off with the 2-week shred, which I think is her most popular one. I think. I did
that one, but it took me like 3 weeks, but at least I completed it.
Honestly, I was gonna say, even just completing it it's the way that girl is ripped, first of all, and kudos to her for putting together a plan in this pandemic that's free and everybody can connect by working out. I feel like a lot of people have been doing this challenge and with other groups of friends or family, which is really cool. But yeah, I discovered her, I think, based on something you and another one of my friends had mentioned as well. So I've been doing her workouts as well.
How do you find her workouts?
Yeah, I really like them. I think at the beginning they were very difficult. So I liked to run before. I kind of stopped running over the pandemic, and so I'm more of like a cardio kind of buff. I don't really do a lot of like strength training or weight training. But but when I started her workouts, it's like everything at once, right? Like her
Yeah.
2 week shred, it's like one after another, 30 seconds, only 5 seconds break,
Multiple
another thing,
videos.
5 seconds
Yeah, and
break.
no breaks.
No,
Well,
barely
very little
any
breaks.
breaks. Yeah,
It
she'll
feels like
say
a
we
break.
have. Yeah, she'll say
Yeah.
we have a bit of a longer break now, and it's 15 seconds, and you're like, oh. Yeah, but I do find that they did help me get stronger, even just for the first 2 weeks. The main reason I continued with her program was because after so when I was doing her 2 week shred, um, when I was doing that, I was really bad at doing planks. Like planks are the bane of my existence.
Mhm.
My shoulders, not very strong. My arms in general, I can't support my body weight. But by the end of that challenge, because she had so many things to do with planks, I felt like I had improved, and it's not anything to do with the numbers, but more with, oh, I'm able to do the exercises sequentially without starting or
Mhm.
stopping as
Yeah.
much. So that itself gave me the motivation to continue and do some of her other programs. And so, yeah, I'm still doing them right now. She is really cool, and I like
Mhm.
her workouts as well. And there's a couple of other YouTubers that I discovered too. So, yeah, I think the pandemic, I used to go to the gym before the pandemic, but the
Yeah.
pandemic has really shown me how many options there are for working out just in the comfort of your own
Yes.
condo now, which
And
is
that's
amazing.
kind of what you need
Yeah.
to do now that you can't go to the gym.
Exactly. Even when the gyms were open, I was waiting a little bit with bated breath. Like I don't think I'm gonna
Yeah.
go until we know for sure, and lo and behold, things got shut down again.
Same.
But
Mhm.
yeah. And how about you? So how have you been taking care of yourself during the
Uh,
pandemic?
it was very, very challenging in the beginning, the first 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
So how long have we been in the pandemic now? Like over,
Mid-March, I think.
yeah, like it was in March, so it's been a long time now. And
Yeah.
I did write an article about my pandemic experience in the first 3 months, and I'm just gonna
Mm-hmm.
shameless plug. I'm just gonna mention it.
Not shameless.
It's on my website. So 3 months in quarantine, a transformative period at tinaadventures.com. 1A. um, yeah, it was really difficult in the beginning just because the first 3 months I did not even go out at all. Like I would go out for walks and around the neighborhood, but I didn't even go for groceries. Like I didn't see anyone. And of course, the
Mm-hmm.
change was so drastic. You can't see your friends. So it was really hard for me. But how I took care of myself mentally and emotionally was, again, staying connected with friends, with you and our UWSG group. I'm so grateful that we have the weekly chats, even though I'm not always there weekly, but I do I do really appreciate, those chats, especially during this time. Did you like reconnect with people that you haven't talked to in a long time? And then all of a sudden
Yeah, I did.
that kind of thing? Yeah.
Yeah, I
So
did.
I really appreciate everyone or anyone who, like, even a simple message like, oh hey, how are you doing, and just
Mhm.
checking in on your friends, and like I have friends that I haven't talked to for like over 5 years. They were awesome, and they would message me, and then like, we would hop on a call, and then we'd talk for like 2 hours to catch up, and it's just so great to at least have this time, and also to reach out to other people that maybe you didn't talk to for a long time, but then
Mhm.
like you care enough to reach out. So there's that.
Mhm.
I also
Yeah.
have been doing a lot of journaling more
Mhm.
recently. Um, there's just like a lot to think about during this time. Like I felt like I have
Mhm.
been more introspective, and right, you also feel that
Mhm.
way too.
I
Um,
do, yeah.
yeah, and even seeking therapy and talking to a professional, I think that helped a lot. I was like on and off
Mhm.
it, and if anyone um, wants to know about any resources, you can feel free to reach out to me. Like I know some resources and I can share my experiences as well. But of course, I think that can be another episode on its own, like mental health and therapy too.
Yeah, it's a big topic to cover.
It is.
100%.
But and then physically, I'm very surprised because like I got a gym membership this year, right? Like early this year, and then but I only went to the gym like for 2 months before the whole pandemic happened. Or even then, like I had my friends as accountability partners, but then I didn't even go that often. So then actually when I started working out at home during the pandemic, I actually had this calendar and I was so surprised that I actually worked out for like 4 months every day straight. like I was so surprised because I was like crossing it off, right? And then but then I didn't really do the things properly, like the workouts properly, because I was getting like back pain and everything. And I'm like, okay, I think I should have rested, like, in between some of the days, right? But I didn't rest. But I also started really slow, like really small. Like I literally did like 10 minutes a day or less than that, and I built my way up. And I also tried like the 30-day yoga challenge. I basically tried to do everything to make myself feel better because I was in such a low, sad state. Yeah.
That's so good. I think that's really important that you mentioned that too. Like sometimes you needed to take rest days, because that's also part of taking care of yourself physically. If your back is hurting, then you want to take a rest day. That is taking care. That is self-care physically. I do that too. So on some days when I come back from work and it's really tiring to work out after work, usually I'll work out before work or on my days that I don't have work. So when I come back from work, I have set aside some days on the days where I come back and I don't have time in the mornings to work out, where I'll just say, you know what, this is a rest day for me, and try to just commit to the fact that it's a rest day rather than feeling guilty that I didn't do anything. And I have to keep reminding myself that's a self-care thing.
Sometimes, like, I have to remind myself too, like, because also, like, I'm working from home now, and like, it's so hard to set boundaries after work. Like, you're in your room, your home, and then to like rest after work and not like work throughout the whole day. And to also remind myself, like, rest is productive too, and to like take the time to rest. And
that really is a big thing.
Another thing is I found that like now that the weather is still nice, I try to go out for walks as much as I can for fresh air. It really makes a difference. Like even in 5 minutes I go outside, I'm like, whoa, like I feel so much better.
It's so underrated when you go outside and you just breathe the not stuffy air of your own room. And I'm guilty of just being essentially just somebody who stays in and kind of hibernates, especially during the pandemic. Even when it was nice outside, I would take a walk here and there, but I'm very guilty of just going into hibernation when I have my off days. So but when you go outside, you really feel the difference. Like it goes into your lungs and you feel like your head is so much clearer.
Exactly. I have to mention our self-care article. So So Anita was a part of this article. It's a collab article with me and my friends. And it's titled 11 Women Share Self-Care Tips for a Healthy Mind, Body, and Soul. And I love this article. It's like one of my favorites just because, like, everyone shares this really useful tips.
It was really, really nice to see your sampling of all the different people that you know, and in so many different areas as well, and how they take care of themselves as well. Because I even read some of the stuff and I thought, hey, I should incorporate that into my routine kind of thing. And nowadays it's so important to have that kind of recognition that, oh, I'm burnt out and I have to take care of myself. So it was really cool to see everybody. One of my favorite articles you've written too, Tina. I'm not biased though.
And honestly, like I was like, oh my god, I love Anita's answer. So I'm gonna put it at the top. Not to say everyone else is like I put mine at the bottom, but like the point is yours are so good that you need to share it with the world. And
Oh,
yeah.
did you want me to read it out?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, I'll read it out. Thank you. First of all, thank you for putting it at the top. But also, I was so, just as a background for you, Tina, I don't know if I told you this, but I was so nervous writing this out. I was like, I don't feel qualified to do this.
Oh my gosh.
But
I could say something like, yeah, I think when I asked a couple people, they're like, oh, I don't feel qualified to share my tips about self-care. I'm like, what? Like, no, like we all, I mean, we all have different ways of, what self-care means to us and how we practice it. But
yeah,
I'm just like, this needs to be a good reminder to take care of yourselves more.
it is true. I did like that reminder too. And I was so excited to, like, even though I felt that I wasn't qualified, I was so excited because I always get excited when you ask me to help you with stuff, Tina, because you're so cool.
Like
just the way that you do.
Be a part of that.
Just whatever you do, it's like your life approach. I was like, wow, she's asking me for something so exciting. So for me, it was mostly recognizing signs of burnout. So that's something that we've already kind of touched on so far in this podcast. Mm-hmm. And what I wrote was, for me, self-care always starts with recognizing that I'm burnt out. As an introvert, the week can sometimes be mentally and emotionally exhausting with a lot of social interaction. So I'll find a day that I can plan ahead and set aside where I can be on my own to recharge. My me day usually involves me doing exercise to get some much needed endorphins, a pampering session, getting my nails done, doing a face mask, and being productive by getting some errands done. I'll also usually break up the day by throwing on YouTube or Netflix and doing some painting. By the end of the day, I'm usually pretty eager to get going on stuff for next week. So mostly just figuring out, hey, I'm burnt out. I need to take a day to myself. And the introverted part of my personality does play into that very heavily. I do find sometimes it's one day, sometimes I need 2 days where I'm not talking to anybody.
Oh my God.
Right? Yeah, it's one of those things. And I didn't realize, going back to the introverted part, I didn't realize how much of an introvert I was until I was in, I guess, post-secondary. So it was my undergrad and my optometry schooling that I realized that I'm an introvert, because on the weekends it would be so nice to just sit back and kind of not really socialize a little bit. Not that I don't like socializing. It's great.
Yeah.
But it's just all good things in moderation,
Right.
And that's what I feel like my personality was. But yeah, it's mostly just about figuring out, hey, I'm burnt out, so I'm going to do something for myself. Yeah.
That's great. And do you find that you experience burnout pretty often, like even now?
I think I'm more prone to it because sometimes I have a stressed personality and I'm a worrier too. And so it's not just things that will come over from work, because sometimes, yes, it can be stressful. I think everybody's jobs can be stressful, especially during the pandemic. You're seeing a lot of things on the news that sometimes weighs on you. And you're worrying about family and friends too now, especially during this time. So I think I'm more prone to thinking about things. And when I think about things like that, it does burn me out. So I do still get burnt out quite often. So I would say that generally once a week, I do need to do some type of thing where I am just focusing on myself and just focusing on kind of having a slightly lazy day, slightly productive day. And it's just me and myself and I, my best friends, and then kind of going through the day. I would say that. Do you feel like you get burnt out pretty often? I don't know if it's now more than before or if it's the same or.
For sure, I experience burnout quite often, I would say. And especially during this time of the year, like closer to the end of the year, I definitely feel that I definitely experienced that. Just thinking back, every time I'd be like, oh my God, like I'm just doing too much and I don't like slow down, and I tend to spread myself too thin sometimes. And even like now, I have experienced it this year, but then I'm also, because I'm more aware of that pattern that I have sometimes, and I need to slow down and take care of myself more. And even though I have so many things I want to do, I definitely am taking more time to myself. I think also the fact that we can't really go out and socialize, it does kind of help a little bit too, because now I'm like, okay, on the weekends, I can like actually make time for myself, and even saving from the commute time and all of that too. So, but just now being more like intentional with my time too, like, oh, I'm gonna actually like take a break today. Even this our meeting today, we had to reschedule a few times because we were both like, oh, we need this time to take a break, or we needed this time to rest, which is fine. And I'm glad that we did that so that we can do it today and feel more refreshed and better.
Exactly. Yeah. It's definitely now, you're right. The part that you brought up about the pandemic kind of making you realize this stuff, I think that a lot of us don't realize how burnt out we are until we take a moment to slow down, or when things slow down in our life and you realize, hey, I really needed this mentally and emotionally.
Yeah, like sometimes you don't realize how tired you are until you take the time to rest.
Yeah, I want you to read your answer though, because you also had a really good answer from that article, even though you said you put it at the end.
Well, mine is, I actually talked about a lot of things too, but then it basically is about building self-awareness, and it all starts with the mind. Anytime I catch myself overthinking or clouded with distorted thoughts, I do my best to reframe them into positive and actionable ones. Leaning on my support system and practicing gratitude through journaling helps me put things into perspective. Having a routine and tracking down my progress also helps me look at the bigger picture to see what works for me and what doesn't. This allows me to create better habits and boundaries for my physical, mental, and emotional well-being. I try to focus on quality sleep and regular exercise, so finding accountability partners helps me stay on track. At the end of the day, I remind myself to take things one day at a time and to honor my growth and progress rather than seek perfection. So basically, I think that a lot of times, especially during the pandemic, it's so easy to spiral into negativity. And and then that's when I have to like catch that and try to, reframe my thoughts and try not to continue to go down that spiral. So to focus on the good things in my life and to do something that like uplifts me rather than to just sit in like sorrow or like to be sad. Talking to you guys, my friends, family, that support system helps a lot during this time. And we're gonna talk about other habits and things that I try to build into my routine.
The part that I really liked about that when I originally read it was when you said, remind myself to take things one day at a time, to honor my growth and progress rather than seek perfection, because that perfection line it honestly hit very hard for me. I know it does for so many people, right?
Yes.
Because I think also just in the world we live in, a lot of times we're thinking all the time about having to be perfect or keeping up the appearances, or always trying to be on the grind, like the daily grind, like you always have to be hustling. But and sometimes it gets to a point where it's just very tiring and exhausting, and you can't keep up with that momentum unless you stop and you think, I am doing good and I shouldn't think that I have to do this all the time. I don't want to again burn myself out. And I need to take a break now because I have been doing good so far. I am growing, and I don't need to be perfect 100% of the time. So yeah, I really enjoyed that line. That was a really hit home for me.
Yeah. So like literally, we are all taking it one day at a time right now, and and just celebrate all the small wins, everything that happens during the day. And just progress over perfection.
Yeah, exactly. Progress over perfection. That's a good way to phrase it.
Yes. I'm going to ask you a very personal question. I mean,
Okay.
this is heart to heart. We're having heart to hearts, but we also want to go dive a little deeper, a little more vulnerable. So, could you share a personal experience where you felt that you lacked self-love and the actions that you took to love yourself more?
Mm-hmm. That's a difficult question. I will say that I do think that I think I mentioned it earlier on when we were talking in this conversation, but I go through ups and downs, and I think that's pretty typical of a lot of people too. Um, and there have been many periods of my life where I feel like I've been in a funk and I've needed to try to bring myself out of it somehow. But I'll give, I guess, a more recent example, which is kind of when I started to go back to work. So, because of the pandemic, one of the things that had happened is that I work as an optometrist at a clinic, and our clinic actually had to shut down because of the lockdown. And for a few months, I was off of work, and then once things started to pick back up, I started to go back to work as well. Now, a lot of things with this transition from going back from, I was actually living at home for a little bit of time as well, as I think a lot of people were at the time when things kind of went into lockdown. And then transitioning back to being on my own and doing all the stuff at work, amongst thinking about having to be in the workforce again, seeing contact with lots of making contact with a lot of people, and with COVID kind of lingering around, that kind of sent me into a little bit of another one of those little funks, a little bit of a low period, I guess I'll say. And it's very worrying. I think everybody can relate. Not only the direct effects of COVID, but the indirect things, the strain of being away from family and friends, amongst being at work, that kind of stress too. So what I realized was that I need to take a little bit better care of myself. And the best way to prevent myself from getting something like COVID or exposing my loved ones to something like that is to make sure that my body is as best as it could be. So I did start being more serious about working out, and that's around the time where I started to work out with Cultivating and find other sources from YouTube.
Yeah.
I started doing it much more consistently. This is funny. I actually did some research on what vitamins I should be taking. Not huge research, just based on what I've heard is supposed to be good for you. And also, I wanted to be more compliant with taking the vitamins that I'm already supposed to be taking, which I'm a little bit iron deficient, so I should be taking my iron every day. But I think sometimes it's a vitamin, you kind of miss it here and there.
Yeah.
And so I made reminders for myself and put them on my phone. Take your vitamins every day. I decided this is the days that I'm going to be working out, and tried to be very consistent by following a program. So those are the two things that I mainly did to try to make sure that if I'm healthy, then my immune system is healthy, and then I shouldn't be as worried about this kind of transition here. Sleep was another thing, trying to get a bit more sleep. Although, some days it's touch and go, obviously. But
how are you getting more sleep? What are you doing to do that?
Yeah, it's more of there's no science to it. I'm a very up and down person when it comes to my sleep schedule.
Yeah.
But mainly what I started doing was just, even if I'm not going to go to bed right away, just go to bed slightly earlier so I can lie down in bed and wind down. So whereas before I might be sitting on my couch until 11:30 or something like that, I would go maybe an hour earlier, and then I'd spend that 1 hour from 10:30 to 11:30 just winding down in bed. So I might still be looking at my laptop or reading a book or something like that, but I wouldn't I wouldn't be on the couch and still in my like normal clothing. I'd be in my pajamas, ready to go to bed whenever the tiredness did sink in.
Yeah.
So that was the main thing, I guess.
Okay.
I should be probably putting away my phone and or laptop a little bit sooner. I tried that for a while with the book, but I mean, some days are better than others.
I remember you also say that you have this set time that you respond to messages, and then after you don't look at your phone anymore, or like that's it.
Yeah. So generally there's a lot of messages to respond to during the day or in the morning, and so what I'll do is I will respond to everything right before I go to bed. So this will probably be when I'm still in that zone. I'm still in my living room kind of thing. I'll respond to all my messages, so that'll be like all across Facebook, WhatsApp, texting, all of that stuff. And then from there, I'll just basically put my phone in the other room on the charger, and I won't look at it for the rest of the night. Yeah, that is true. I don't look at my phone after, let's say, maybe 10:30. I don't know. You receive my text probably at nighttime.
Sometimes, you might respond later, but it's okay.
Yeah, exactly.
You're still very consistent with it.
I'm trying, and it's hard when there's a lot of messages, and when there's a lot of messages, I want to be able to keep in touch with people because that's the way that we're able to connect, especially right now. And so to make sure that I'm consistent with keeping in touch with people, but also at least not thinking about it all the time, I have like a little boundary where I'll respond to everything at once, and then I'll put my phone away, and then I'll respond to it the next morning, if anything, or the next night. So yeah,
that's really good. I think sleep is something that I'm still struggling with, the habit of just sleeping earlier, and sometimes even waking up early. But then because of my work schedule, I have to wake up, early at a set time, but it's like sleeping earlier that's always been the difficult part, and it's always like day by day depending on how things go, because sometimes you just so like anxious and stressed and you just have so much thoughts in your mind, you just can't shut your brain up, and that's what sleep is like. You just can't sleep. But then I think also, like you said, just having to clock out earlier. Like it takes me like an hour to get ready for bed because all these things to do. Right? I'm still like sitting there, like say I want to be sleeping by like midnight, but I'm still sitting in front of my computer doing stuff at like 11 something, right? And that's not good.
Yeah.
And you need to get away from the screen time too. So.
Yeah. I mean, there's like up and downs with that too, right? And sometimes maybe one day you have more work, or there's something more something that needs your attention that you otherwise wouldn't need on another day. So for me as well, it's a work in progress. I'm not always the best with it. For example, I had a day this past week where I was up until 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. And it's one of those things where you're trying to sleep, but then again, you have thoughts in your head. You can't shut down all the time. So even going to bed early doesn't necessarily help, but trying a little bit more, I guess for me, I'm thinking if I try a little bit more, then I'll probably do a little bit better than if I wasn't trying at all. And then that's how I approach it. Yeah.
Make improvement. It's not gonna. It's okay to fall off track sometimes, as long as you get back on it.
Yeah, exactly. So what, did you have a personal experience that was like similar or maybe different where you lacked self-love and then you wanted to take some action to help rectify that?
So when I was thinking about this question, which I decided to ask, it's funny because I was like, oh, there's so many experiences. I'm sure like you and we both have many experiences that we can talk about. And I'm like, which one should I talk about? So this one, I decided to talk about this experience, which is actually not recent. It is something that happened many years ago. But I decided to share this one because I feel like it was a huge turning point in my life. So I'll always talk about it, or I feel like it's important to talk about it. So this is back in undergrad, which was, 5 years ago.
Gosh.
Yeah, it's a long
Yeah.
time. So
Yeah.
then back in undergrad, we're young, and for myself, I was very lost and confused, and I felt very stuck in terms of what I'm gonna do with my life, and I was actually really
Mm-hmm.
stressed and sad about it. But I didn't really talk to that many people about it either. I didn't feel comfortable sharing that. Like I was doing the science undergrad, right? And I wasn't really doing that well, and I didn't really enjoy a lot of the courses that I was taking. And then it seemed like everyone else knew what they were gonna do with their life or what they're gonna do with their science undergrad
Mm-hmm.
and all that. And then I guess I didn't really know who to talk to, and I did, eventually like open up to my family about it too, and just trying to figure out what am I gonna do. Do I want to finish my science degree, or do I want to switch out of it? And it was already like at this point it was already on my like fourth year, so I was kind of like, okay, might as
Mm-hmm.
well just like finish that degree and then you figure out what I want to do, or like figure out with my degree and just kind of dive into different things. And so even like during my like closer to end, but during my undergrad and even after I graduated, I started to like seek out mentors and people that could help me in terms of just like learning more about different opportunities out there, and also give me like guidance on where I can like different resources and what I can do to kind of explore and learn more about myself. So that's when I started networking too, and conducting like informational interviews and going on coffee chats, because I just didn't know what I could do, and I decided that I have to be more proactive to figure it out. So that's when I did a lot of volunteering, and I asked a lot of people for advice, and there was a lot of figuring it out. But I felt like that by putting myself out there and learning about all these different opportunities, and even like volunteering and like trying out different like work experiences, and eventually even going to teach abroad, and then trying different things um, throughout my career um, journey, I definitely learned a lot more about myself and gained a lot of experiences that were very transferable for like whatever job
Mm-hmm.
I end up um, being in. So then I think that really helped me a lot develop as a person I am today. I definitely feel like that time where I felt like I lacked self-love, I these are things I did to learn more about myself, and
Mm-hmm.
to just, I think for me, it's also like, like, yes, like follow your passion if you know what it is, but then if you don't, like just follow your curiosity. And I just try to do that. I try to be more true to myself and follow whatever that I feel like would make me happy, or what would align to the things I like to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really good. Can I ask, because that's something that I very much admire about you, that you're very proactive, and you're very good at networking with people. So, was this the first time that you started doing like that kind of networking, or being kind of proactive about going forwards and asking other mentors for help? Was there somebody that triggered this kind of thought that you should do this kind of thing, or was it something that you came up with on your own? Because I think for a lot of people, it's a little bit hard to recognize that that's where you need to go, and it's a very hard step to take going forward, that I need to be more proactive, right? It is something that everybody eventually does, but it's a very difficult step, I feel like, to identify.
Yeah, so it was like during my like last term of undergrad. I think it got to the point where it's like I'm so sad that I'm like I need to make a change, like I need to
Mm-hmm.
do something. And then actually it's like really random too, but I actually met this girl online, and she travels a lot. And she actually the one who inspired me to go teach abroad because she taught in Italy, and then eventually she became my mentor, and she was like
Mm-hmm.
teaching me like how to like network. And she's like, oh, you can go out there and like figure out what you would like to do and just talk to people. And then that was like so scary, so intimidating for me to do that.
Yeah.
But I pushed myself, and I remember going to my first conference and preparing for it, like actually like researched the speakers that were there that day. I'm like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, okay, I'm gonna try to talk to this person, and then even approaching random people to talk to. And
Mm-hmm.
I actually at that time I wanted to work for a non for profit. So then I like approached a lot of like there's like vendors there too. So I approached a couple people, and I ended up talking to like a director of the non for profit, who eventually he
Mm-hmm.
invited me to have a coffee chat, and then like I ended up being an intern at their non for profit. So
Cool. Yeah.
yeah, that experience. So then I was like, whoa, like there's one of those moments where I'm like, oh, I can actually take responsibility for my life, but also create opportunities for myself. So
Mm-hmm. That's really cool. And also, it's like self-love can be scary too, because having to figure out that I need to take care of myself and I need to
mhm.
do this for myself. And then it's scary to have to jump into the world of having to all of a sudden like network and find people to ask advice for and connect with other people and figure out what am I doing. That's very brave. So good
Thank
for you, Tina. I think we can all learn something from that, me especially.
yeah.
But I really admire that part
Mhm.
about you. You're very
Yeah.
good at connecting with other
And
people.
so are
So
you. You're really good at that too.
I don't think I network as much as as
Well,
much
you're
as
good
you
with
do,
people,
but
but yeah.
thank you, Tina.
Yes. Okay. So I'm curious, what is your love language?
Okay, because I saw this that we were gonna do this today, I had an idea of what my love language was, but I actually redid the test
Oh,
today
you did?
just to see. Yeah, and I thought I knew what it was, but I retook it today, and it actually kind of surprised me.
Oh, maybe it changed
um,
because it might
it
change time,
changed.
right?
I think it changed. I believe it changed. I think the top three are always they're always the top three.
Okay.
But the one that was number one changed. So when I did the test today, I actually got acts of service as my number
Oh.
one. Yeah. Yeah. So I always used to think acts of service because it was always like either one, two, or three acts of
Mhm.
service for me. And originally, before I did this test, I think there's a bit of a connotation of acts of service being like, you should do everything for me, like that kind of love language thing. At
Mhm.
least in my head, sorry, I thought
And what does
that.
that mean?
Um,
Actually mean?
so acts of service generally means that you appreciate, essentially, it means that actions are louder than words. So you appreciate when somebody does something for you rather than does something for you very nice. And it could be like a big kind of thing or a small kind of thing. So an example would be somebody making tea for you at the end of the day when they know that you're tired, or putting a blanket on you when you've fallen asleep on the couch, something like that. Or maybe helping you out with something when they know that you're exhausted,
Mhm.
or doing something that they don't want to do, but they know is important to you,
Yeah.
something like that.
Mhm.
I feel like I really value that kind of stuff because it shows how much people care and are appreciative of you, but without having to say it. I will say that my number two one was words of affirmation, so I do like when people also say say that they appreciate me. But yeah, I was a little bit surprised to see it because I think the breakdown was 37% was acts of service, and
Oh.
then it was 23% words of affirmation, and then after that it was quality time.
Uh-huh.
So
Okay.
yeah.
I remember. Well, we had this conversation quite a while ago, but then we had the same love languages, and at least your top two were like words of affirmation, quality time before.
Yeah.
But like again, also my top three are the same as well. But then for myself, it would be the first one. Well, I didn't redo the quiz, but I feel like I did it so many times that I'm like tired of doing it. I mean, like, I feel like,
You probably know it in your head.
well, I think like it's about this, like those top three as well. But then I think that, yeah, like it is like with affirmation and then quality time. And I think that's why we work so well together, Anita. We vibe so well. Like we can't really spend quality time, at least physically in person with people nowadays. But for sure, like even a simple message or hopping on a call, virtual chat really does makes me happy. Makes my day.
Yeah. It is like spending time with each other and then just hearing those things from other people. And it doesn't have to be anything like out of the ordinary, but just something normal like, oh, I thought about you today. This reminded me about you. It's a very nice, very sweet thing to hear from somebody else. And I have tons of friends that will say that because I have very nice friends. I have very good friends in my life, including you, Tina. And like that is very heartwarming. But yeah, when I did this test again, I was very surprised to see that acts of service had come up to the top. So yeah, but it makes sense now. I feel like I value the actions almost speak louder than words a little bit more nowadays. And I feel like that's the way I like to reciprocate my love as well. Showing people that I care and also affirming it for them too.
Yeah, like not just receiving it, but giving it as well.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So, final question for the day.
Oh.
I thought
okay.
make it a bit fun. And so, what is your superpower?
Oh, so this is also a tough one for me. Yeah, I was gonna say, I think it's just because of the trouble that I think I have giving myself compliments sometimes. So, it's kind of tough. But if I was to choose one, I would probably say my listening skills. I do think that I'm good at listening to other people, and I think that might be just due to the way that I think I mean I'd like to think that I'm approachable and friendly and non-judgmental. Thank you for affirming these words for me, Tina. But I think because of that, I do pride myself on like if my friends like will have something that they need to say, I do pride myself on people calling to tell me or texting to tell me something that might be very deeply personal to them because it takes a lot of strength. So if somebody's going through something, it takes a lot of strength to go through it, but also a lot of strength to speak up and talk to somebody as well.
Yeah.
And so when somebody calls me and says I need to talk or texts me and says I need to vent right now and they choose to trust me with that information, I pride myself on that being because of my track record of being able to listen to people. And I want to keep that going forward because I feel like it's a very important skill to have. And I do like when other people listen to me, as tough as it is sometimes to talk about stuff on my end, it is very a nice feeling. So I'd probably say that. That's probably where it is.
Yes. Yeah. You do have great listening skills, and I know that a lot of people they like to turn to you with their problems or just anything in general, just to talk to you about anything really, because you do create that very like safe space for people to feel comfortable to open up to you. And you do have that track record, yes, for just being there for people. So, and I actually, again, I also kind of struggled with this. First thing that came to mind was like I put was my ability to see the good in people. So like I put that because I think that generally, like when I meet people, I think that like I'm able to see the good in them, and
you are
okay, and I'm also like I'm also an empath, so I am able to like I feel a lot of things, but I'm also able to like feed on other people's energy type of thing. So I don't know if like
Mhm.
when someone else is like sad or something, and um,
Mhm.
I feel like I can relate to people in that way or understand them in that way. Um,
Mhm.
and I guess that is a good thing.
Yeah, it's a really good thing. It is really good to be able to be very empathetic to somebody else.
Yeah.
Completely agree, Tina. That's definitely somebody that I think you are too. And you always support me whenever I have anything to talk to you. It's why I feel comfortable talking to you and venting to you in our text messages, our marathon text
Oh my god,
messages.
it's essays, essays.
Yeah, essays, more like essays. You're right.
Yeah, I like to message essays, but you know, like you are one of the most consistent people that I talk to. Like, I mean, like,
Aw.
like I talk to different people all the time, but if you, it's like, even if you don't respond in like a day or two, I'm like, okay, it's okay because like I know you respond. Like if you don't respond, I will like
Yeah.
like message you kind of thing. Like a conversation never ends. I just love that. It's just like never ends.
Yeah.
It better not end.
Yeah, it will. It will keep going
Okay,
forever. Don't worry. We'll still be
good.
sending essays to each other in the
Because if you
future,
stop
which
talking to
is
me, I will like find you.
I will find
I
you.
will find you.
Doesn't matter where you are.
Yeah,
All right,
yeah.
Tina, don't worry. I wouldn't even think of not responding to you in the future.
I am so happy that we did this. And, you know, thank you, Anita. Thank you for joining, for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I do want to ask you, where can our listeners find you? Do you want to be found?
Well, I do have an Instagram account. It's at Keshuns, so it's at KESSHUNS. But I don't really post on it very regularly, but it's there. And that's probably about it.
So, yes, everyone, thank you for tuning in. You can find me at tinaadventures.com. So that's my website. And also my Instagram account at underscore Tina Adventures, 1A, and you have the F at the end. So yeah, like these, you can also find like my articles and the articles that we mentioned about like the self care article and also my quarantine one. And there's also one that I wrote previously, 5 ways to practice self-love. So you can see the links below. And yeah, thank you, everyone. Thank you, Anita. Okay.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.